Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I'm Iris, and folks, we got to chat about this Leo new moon because it is upon us and she is mighty. This new moon is happening on July 24th. It's at 3:11 p.m. Eastern Time, so you want to adjust for wherever you are on the globe. And wow, so there's a lot of layers to this new moon. I want to focus us into feeling, working, co-creating with the kind of dominant narrative that this new moon is speaking. And that is that this new moon, which is happening in Leo, so we're talking about our sun and our moon together. They are at 2 degrees of Leo. They are talking with all the outer planets. Okay, so I am going to put the chart up just so that you can see the visual. They are in a sextile with Uranus and Senna in Gemini. They are in an exact trine with Neptune and Aries and also with Saturn. And there is also a trine with true black moon Lilith, who is in Sagittarius. So there's a fire trine going on. And they are exactly opposite Pluto, who is retrograde in Aquarius. So we have got this new moon talking to Pluto retrograde, Neptune retrograde, Saturn retrograde, also talking with Uranus, okay? This is pretty big. So this is a profound moment. It's a profound moment. You know, on the one hand, the outer planets and how the outer planets are working with each other is always about the collective of the human experience here. And especially when it's a new moon, you know, this makes that collective experience very personal. And it makes what is going on in the collective and these outer planets, the way that they're in an ongoing conversation with each other. And that intensifies in August. And that includes the outer planets and Saturn, because Saturn is journeying with Neptune, right? And that is part of this birthing of a new reality while old structures are dissolving. This is a moment for us to seed into intentions that are about our own creative joy that is birthing itself through this transformative process. Now, Leo is transformative joy. Leo is this kind of emerging into feeling divine energy through us, recognizing that that means I am a creative being and I am here to be a creative being and I just want to work with that energy. That is Leo's archetype. It wants to create joy. It wants to feel joy. It wants others to feel joy. And a new moon brings us into a seeding moment in the cycle of the moon. It's what we enter with the dark moon. So this is a dark moon in Leo fires, talking with all of this outer planet energy. It's a profound moment. There's a lot of energy going on. This is also coming not that long after Mercury has stationed retrograde in Leo. Mercury will be at 13 degrees of Leo in its retrograde journey. It's heading back to 4 degrees in August. So this is also very significant because this new moon that's talking with all the outer planets, it's doing this with us as Saturn and Neptune have just entered their retrograde, and it's happening as part of Mercury's retrograde in Leo. So whatever's coming up in this new moon, it's kind of like there's brackets. There's brackets that go around us, so that we can really seed into potentially feeling an understanding in our blood, understanding in our spirit, understanding in your heart space a little bit more about what is birthing itself within you and how that wants to align to your heart's creative purpose. Because Leo is attuned to our heart's creative purpose. And so we really want to listen. We want to listen so deeply during this new moon. The day before it, coming into it, bringing us out of it. We want to cultivate the space and the time. And so you do, especially if you have a lot of responsibilities, if you have to show up, you have to feed, you have to do what, you do want to cultivate some time on the 24th to just really be with yourself and feeling in to what is shedding, what is birthing. It's a wonderful time to do practices that can help us come into a more embodied phenomenological process. By that, I mean we are really in the moment and we're not approaching it from a heady, cognitive place that is trying to plan. That is not the energy of this new moon. This is not about planning. This is about being present and feeling what is here. And it is also about breakdown. This new moon is opposite Pluto. Okay, so let's come into the layers a little bit more. So this new moon is opposite Pluto, who's there retrograde in Aquarius. Now that Pluto and Aquarius journey is always about the collective. It is always about what humanity has an opportunity to collectively shed and evolve into. And then how that's impact that collective journey, the time that we are alive, the Pluto generations that we are part of and how they are resonating and working with this current Pluto energy, which is Pluto in Aquarius, how we have a role to play. And this new moon, which is in Leo, which is about your own creative heart journey, that wants to become so much more authentic. Because Pluto in Aquarius is tasking us over these next 20 years to continuously shed and become more authentic beings here in this plane. To do the work over and over and over that stops ego from silencing higher mind. You know, when you're moving through your day and there's that little flash of intuition and it's like, oh, I shouldn't put that there because it's going to fall. Or, oh, I shouldn't commit to this because I don't really want to do it. But then we silence it. Oh, we silence it, right? And it's like we're always just in this journey of not silencing it and listening to it, because a lot of us have been taught not to trust that inner knowing. A lot of us have been actually told that inner knowing is just not real. And yet, when we're moving in sync with what is, and when we're really present, especially when we're really present in body and mind, we can hear that higher mind self speaking with us. And there, it might be not just about where not to put that glass. It might be about which direction not to take, in our life and just these steps. And so Pluto in Aquarius is helping us to shed the layers of ego, which can be in a war with higher mind, because ego is of this plane. Ego is this kind of over self-identifying. When ego is hindering us, we all need ego, and it is healthy, and that's part of our natal sun journey, and it wants to shine. But it wants to shine in sync, in concert with how our old natal chart is wanting to work for our highest good. And so when we're moving from a place that's fear-based, that's stuck, and some of the patterns that come from so many complicated experiences, that's when we get over-attached to ego. And so Pluto in Aquarius, and over-attachment to ego, Leo, opposite this Pluto in Aquarius. And Aquarius wants that to break down. So how does that show up in Leo? That shows up in seeking validation. That shows up in, wanting to make others happy, whether that is through telling jokes or through shape-shifting myself a little bit so that I can perform. Leo, when Leo is caught in a fear-driven cycle, it's performing, and it's performing for the sake of validation and acceptance. But that gets it, because then when that's happening, that goes all into social norms. It goes into gendered stereotypes. It goes into class stereotypes. It goes into all the social systems of identity and identity construction that are validated, that are said, this is okay, this is not. Leo wants to feel pure, raw, creative fire flowing through it and it wants to create with it. And it doesn't want to create for the sake of being accepted. It wants to create because by creating with this impulse, this aesthetic impulse that's going to come through in whether it's an art project or how I live my life or how I have relationships. It depends where you have Leo in your chart, especially 2 degrees of Leo. It just wants to be that creative spark being joyfully played with. And that's the thing, it's ongoing. When we're in a state of play, we are not attached to the outcome. When we're in a state of play, we are in the present moment. And yet fear and our fearful experience, and especially the way that we've been accepted or not accepted, and this usually has a lot to do with childhood experiences and then those young adult experiences, it teaches us to kind of perform. And Leo is excellent at performing. And this new moon wants to break that. It wants to seed into higher mind, speaking to you in this particular moment, in this moment where you are alive with what the heck is going on with collective humanities, right? With the collectives in humanity. And how, as systems are breaking down, as we are seeing power grab into old systems that are breaking down, how we can come into our seeding into the creative spark that is going to carry us into these new realities being birthed. This new moon is in a fire trine with Neptune and Saturn, and they're retrograde now. We are going into this potent few months of reassessing who we are, what we're here for. And they gotta go back into Pisces. We gotta go back into cosmic soup. We gotta go back into the womb and be rebirthed. And that comes in 2026. But this is such a potent moment to, again, cultivate that time, because especially at a new moon, we want to cultivate time to get quiet. And you want to cultivate time to get quiet enough to listen to your heart pounding creative desire. And that wants to be attuned to these new spiritual realities that are birthing themselves. And yet, that is also talking with true Black Moon Lilith, who is right in that fire trine in Sagittarius. And Black Moon Lilith in Sagittarius, she has been silenced one too many times about her creative expression, about her joy, about her desire to shoot that arrow of Sag and go after it and not care where it takes her, because she knows it is all about the journey and that she is here to be in the journey. And that energy of reclaiming the fire to follow the journey, right? And this is where you have 1 degree of Sagittarius in your chart. That's how that Black Moon Lilith reclaiming energy wants to show up. That's talking to what's being seeded in the core of the self, to what's streaming through in the new structures that are needing to establish themselves in the self in order for a new spiritual embodiment to move through this plane. And we can feel into that right now. It's also lovely because there is reclaiming energy through Pluto is all about reclaiming in certain layers as well, especially when we drop the very old paradigm patriarchal interpretation of Pluto. But Black Moon Lilith brings that in, and so does Sedna. And she brings in that galactic energy, but that galactic energy is speaking with the outer planet Uranus, who's now freshly in Gemini and coming into that conjunction with Sedna. But she is sextiling the new moon. So she is bringing her, remember that Sedna brings us into that Inuit myth of the woman who, through the archetypal wounding, which for her is a wounding with her father, a person whom nature has designed to protect her, does not, and ultimately saves himself over her. And so she drowns in the ocean because they're on the ocean in a storm when there's different accounts, but at one point she's holding on because she's gone over the boat, and he cuts her hand so that she can't capsize him because he saves himself. and she falls into the ocean, right? And she becomes the Inuit goddess of the ocean. And her other body parts transform into these wise beings in the ocean, whales, right, and seals. And there's this ancient memory in the ocean that she embodies. And yet she was always seeded to become this because she did not fit into the role that she was kind of born to in her community. And so she brings this transformation and transmutation of the archetypal wound in Gemini, in that airy way that is merging with Uranus, which is all about reclaiming, especially for the collective, reclaiming actual ideas and communities of justice that are not about what's going on at the top of the power, but is about, I mean, it's grassroots, it's from the bottom up, and it's in local community where that is really able to happen as Uranus moves through with this conversation with Senna and Gemini right now. And yet this conversation is talking to the new moon. It's talking to us. It's talking to you. And there is strong reclaiming energy. And, that's a word that's used a lot. I use it a lot, both in my astro realms and in my kind of feminist scholar realms. And it's a potent word, but it also, sometimes I think folks think reclaiming just means like this part of myself that I used to have, but then I got caught up in things. And it can mean that. But it also means the parts of ourselves and the parts of our lineages and the parts of our ancestry and the parts of humanity that power over ideologies have silenced, have tried to repress. And when we enter into these reclaiming journeys, which is what Senna, Black Moon Lilith, Pluto, Chiron, they bring us into in all different archetypal ways, we're remembering. And we're remembering, and yet that remembering, when it's embodied, it becomes this present experience. And it's just, it is rewriting the past in the present moment. Like in a lot of my trauma work, I used to write about how when we come into embodied paths of healing, we can change the past. Not in terms of events that have happened, but when we're doing it from a phenomenological embodied stance and we are not driven by a patriarchal, cognitive, deterministic understanding of what healing is or isn't, and we're not trying to match ourselves to an idea of normal where that normal never experienced the things that we experience, so we ain't ever going to be that, and we're just allowing ourselves to embody who we are, what we've survived, all time shifts, and we move from a place of thriving. And thriving never rejects the parts of ourselves that are wounded. It allows them, and it allows new life. It's like when you see the tree that's been cut and then there's that new tree coming up from the stump. It's like we have all of this organic life that comes from the composting of our own embodied psyche. And that reclaiming is that journey. And it's very individual, and it's also part of so much more, so many different layers of collective. And that energy's here because Senna is here in a very close sextile with this new moon. And Black Moon Lilith is in the fire trine with the new moon and Neptune. And so there is a spiritual reclaiming. There is, the Uranus and Senna bring in justice structures that we're in the process of creating. And this is ongoing, and it's years, because the outer planets are talking to us about new paradigms. That is what they are creating. And we are the humans in this stage of the new paradigms. And this new moon is just very potent. But also remember, it is opposite Pluto. So while there are these powerful trines and sextiles, there is an opposition with Pluto. And Pluto doesn't joke around. He doesn't mess around. Pluto brings it up. And so remembering that it's a new moon and it's a time to get quiet. It's a time to listen. And what we want to listen to is what is breaking down so that we can move from a place of heart-centered life, of heart-centered creative spark for life. And that wants to go into everything. And it's just a moment to align, a moment to feel that. And that this is happening within the cycle of Mercury retrograde in Leo just shows how the more that we can cultivate the space to let go and really just listen, that's when we're co-creating. Okay, and also one other layer that is going on right now is that this is happening just after an exact conjunction between Mars and the South Node in Virgo. The exact conjunction is around 20 degrees. And this is a few days after that, so Mars will have started to move ahead of that South Node, but they're still in a pretty close conjunction. And so there's also something about letting go of control. Okay, because especially with Mars and Virgo coming into the conjunction with the South Node, this is an opportunity for letting go of control. So this is in the few days leading up to the new moon. It's really starting when I upload this video. And that is also of karmic layering, because we're talking about the transiting South Node, and it's so deeply personal because it's transiting Mars. And so there's this other layer of letting go. And as we let go, we shed. Now, the thing about letting go is like, it sounds like, oh yeah, just let go. It's fine, right? But letting go comes from an inner gaze that's witnessing what we're letting go of. And the inner gaze, that takes decades of our practice of not turning away. You know, it's like I hold my gaze when it feels right. And it's also a practice of when to know it's time to turn away. I'm going to go watch that show. I'm going to go do that thing. I'm going to go enjoy cooking. I'm going to not kind of focus. But the letting go happens when our mind and our body and our heart and our soul and our psyche are synced up and we're letting go. That's why when it's simply just a letting go and I just say I let go, I forgive. You know, while that's a practice, yes, that can also be what we kind of call spiritual bypassing, because if I'm not aware that I've got anger and I'm not aware of, you know, like it's an ongoing process and there's always stages, and Virgo is aware of what is in the body and how the mind can connect to that. Virgo is them syncing up. And when Virgo is driven by fear, it seeks control. And sometimes that's through ideas of perfectionism. Sometimes it's just through putting an incredible amount of pressure on oneself. And so this South Node conjunct Mars is just such an opportunity to release that fear-driven impulse. And the release with a South Node, that usually comes from stuff coming up, whether it's getting triggered or suddenly, you know, someone that's like a kind of superficial experience in the present moment is triggering some pretty deep emotions. And then we want to look gently, and sometimes we need support, whether that's a therapist or a teacher, or a coach or a friend or an animal or a plant or the ocean. That's my guide, right? So one of my guides. And so we want to look at what's there and see why it's there. And that's the piece of the inner gaze, making connection. And that's what we hold intention and space to let go of when it feels right. It's also really important, especially if you're moving with complex trauma, intergenerational trauma, lineages of trauma and wounding, that we don't force the process. Right? But things come up when they come up, and then that can be an opportunity to see what's under the surface, hold that inner gaze with love and release, and set intentions around that releasing. And that's a powerful moment that we're moving through with Mars conjunct the South Node, and that is kind of an underlying harmony that's going on leading up to, and then as we come into this new moon. And so there's that letting go that's also part of the threads of karma, because it's involving our nodes. And there's Pluto saying, oh yeah, we're letting go. We are breaking through some layers here. And again, the Pluto is wanting to break through so that our more authentic self can come up. Now, we've done layers of this. That same Mars, who's conjunct the South Node, that Mars had its go around with Pluto, right? We had 3 oppositions of Mars and Leo. because we had the Mars retrograde. So that was about our drive. That was about how we actually want to put energy into accomplishing things. The new moon is about ourself. It's about our own heart. It's about some of the wounds where we had to learn to perform. And the thing about that is that, like, we can go decades not even know we're doing it, especially if that learning is entwined with survival. And so as we get more and more space and become more and more safe in ourselves, and Jupiter is in Cancer for a year, which is about the wisdom of safety from self, the cocoon of self, the abundance of love for self, where self-love is something that helps create security and safety within the self, right? As we create more and more of that, we let go of the layers of performance, whether it was for society, whether it was for ourselves because we felt we need to prove something, whether it was trying to prove something to a parent who really all we wanted was unconditional love, but we got taught we had to become whatever we had to become. There's so many different stories. There's so many different layers. There's the intergenerational weight, especially on immigrants, you know, and the stories of having to become something for the sacrifices and then finding one's own journey in that story, and where, you know, this is a Leo new moon. It's about your joy. It's about your heart space. And so how are there ways to honor what we want to honor in those complicated lineages of the stories that our lives are made in, and the new reality that's birthing, because it's a new reality and it's a new self, because it's Neptune in air. It's Neptune in Aries talking with Saturn, and that energy, whoo, fire trine with our new moon, with Black Moon, Lilith, and Sag. So remembering that there's that reclaiming, like, yes. You want to find the yes that gets into the gut, that gets into the fire. We want to seed into that yes. That's what Black Moon Lilith is here. But the yes does not come for performing for others' ideas of ourselves. It comes for holding our own heart with love and compassion and saying yes. All right, yes feels like a good place to stop. So I am sending lots of love for this potent, rich moment that we are in, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.